Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both very much for all of the work that you and the Commission and all of the staff have done to put forward such a helpful report. As Senator Udall suggested, I want to go back and talk about oil spill research and response. That's something that Senator Udall, Senator Bingham, and I have been working on legislation. I found it stunning at the first hearing this committee did after the spill happened, where we had representatives from BP, Halliburton, and Transocean. When I asked the question, how much money are you spending on oil spill research, deep water oil spill research, the answer from each of them was zero. So I think this is clearly one place where we've got to focus, and I was really pleased to see that that's one of the key recommendations from the report. I'm also particularly interested because at the University of New Hampshire we have a Coastal Response Research Center, and Dr. Nancy Kinner there, who heads it, has been doing some of the leading research in the world in this area. But as you talk about the private sector institute that you would envision would be the way to address some of the leading research in this area, how do you envision that actually happening? Do you see that the industry recognizes this need and is willing to respond to that? And right now, as you know, there is sort of a multi-layered effort that's never been funded within the federal system to try and address oil spill response. And how do you see the two of those working? And could you just talk a little bit more about how we move this issue along?
Well, our history with respect to response investments is not impressive. We started
dismal.
We started after Exxon Valdez to make a reasonable try at it, and I think it's gone down about 50% in the remaining years as memories of that disaster have waned. The establishment on industry initiative of the Well Containment Corporation is, in my view, a very responsible and appropriate thing for them to do, and the amount of money they've committed to it is serious money, $1 billion from 4 companies. And maybe BP is now going to join it and make it number 5. The Secretary of the Interior also wants to make research a major function of a new industry academic government enterprise he wants to create, beginning with a FACA committee advisory group there. So there's a lot more attention going to it. We really do desperately need it, though, and I think the industry will probably respond significantly to some aspects of this problem with the Marine Well Containment Corporation. But there's some fundamental research needed both on skimmer technology, which is relatively primitive, and based on what I saw in Alaska back in 1989 with the Exxon Valdez, it hasn't really evolved much. It's hard for me to, and there's some who say that it's not that clear how you would change some of these ships. I don't find that really quite believable. The open ocean presents a lot of challenges to skimming. That's really the basic problem we're dealing with, the wave and wind action. The dispersant question needs research. It needs trials. We've recommended that in the report. It seems to me that, and I've always been suspicious of dispersants as largely cosmetic, and they do get into the water column, and the fish can't avoid it and the rest. In this case, we concluded that it was a responsible decision by the EPA administrator to allow it, and to allow it in that quantity. But what really struck me as anomalous was we had the debate about the safety of the dispersant correxit that was proposed to be used after the spill. We've never done any open water experiments at all in Arctic waters, in open, very cold, very icy waters, to find out what in fact happens to hydrocarbons and how do dispersants work with them and how fast do they degrade and so forth. There's a lot of information that we ought to have at the ready before we suddenly in real time are asked to make decisions.
If I could just add
a
paragraph to that. It seems to me that what we saw after the explosion was crisis research. where we were
Right.
struggling to try to answer questions because we needed the answers today to respond. What we need to be moving to is not only an enhanced quantity and quality, but also anticipatory research where we can ask what are the questions that we might need to answer 5 or 10 or more years from now. And I believe that the kind of initiative that you have advocated would give us that ability to be able to look over the horizon and be better prepared the next time we have to face a crisis.
Thank you. My time is up.
Senator Shaheen.
Yes, I'd like to go back to the oil spill R&D issue. And as you referenced, the Oil Pollution Act in 1990 set up an interagency committee, Interior, Coast Guard, EPA, NOAA, to develop and respond for oil spills and to do research and response. And I wondered if the Commission had looked at how that agency functions and whether you have any recommendations relative to its functionality. One of the things that we found in talking to people as we were developing our legislation last session is that there was this sense that nobody was in charge of this aspect of dealing with responding to drilling, particularly deep water drilling. So I wondered if you had recommendations from the report on that issue.
I'm not familiar with the specifics of the operation of that interagency group. All I can say is that when the crisis hit, they had not equipped us to be able to respond in a manner that I think is appropriate. We have made a recommendation that the President, by executive order, should establish a group of both governmental and non-governmental experts to work on all these issues that relate to response, including maintaining our research and development capability to be able to develop the defense against an accident at the same rate that the industry is developing the offense for drilling in increasingly deeper and more risky environments.
My impression of what has been done in Alaska is positive. The only reason we know about the persistence of hydrocarbons under the sands of many of the beaches of Prince William Sound is because there has been a monitoring program in effect that was amply funded for quite a while. The arguments about whether or not the herring crash is attributable to the oil spill, to the extent that there's any real information that is more than speculation, it's the consequence of the fact that when the amount of money was parceled out for the trustee agencies in Alaska, it was done so not in one lump sum, but over a period of years. And I think the lesson for that, for us in this case, is to make sure that we have a continuing capability to determine whether there is impact on the bluefin tuna, which spawns in the Gulf and actually would have come into contact with the oil and gas. What about the crabs and the oysters? Are there lasting impacts on the larvae and their fertility? All of those questions, it would be very unfortunate to let 5, 10 years go by, have another incident, and not have learned from this one. And so the degree to which there is scientific research money capable, and that it is made available over a period of time and not suddenly dispersed and forgotten, I think is important to one of the lessons that we need to respect here.
But that would speak to a funding stream, as Senator Bingaman suggested, that is not based on the annual budgeting process, but is a dedicated funding stream from some other source.
Well, in the case of Alaska, as I recall, it was a $1 billion outlay that was extended, or fine rather, that was applied over a period of 10 years, and that funded the monitoring, as I recall, the research.
But for that period of 10 years.
Yes, and I think they found a way to stretch it out more.
I'm thinking about as we think about the oil spill research and response function also. I thought the Commission's recommendations.
Well, that's what I'm not. I wasn't talking about response.
No, I understand.
Okay.
You were looking at a different aspect of the research, but I thought your fee on offshore leases was provided that dedicated funding source.
Mm-hmm.